Hello and welcome to the third subpool. Here we have all of our late submitters, and I'm just going to go ahead and call this the abuse subpool. All of our actual stacking happens in this subpool, unlike all of the other ones where stacking was very little or none at all. But up first we have Jokrates, who is bringing a whole lot of lasers. I think he's got some other shit in here too, but yeah, he's got defense cannons and lasers, and I think it's a homogeneous fleet. I think it's all just this design. I don't think he has... Oh no, wait. He does have some different ones. These guys you can see are launching drones and have some torpedoes. Let's see what else he's got here. Yeah, it's all that sort of design. Mostly these guys with the big laser blocks and these guys with the drones. And then Dukeslayer over here, he's got some drone launchers himself. You can see he's got a proton beam in the middle, which looks like it's flanked by torpedoes. Some missiles, also in that same sort of cluster around the core. And he's got some antimatter cannons hiding in his armor. So, let's see how these go at it. Of course, Jokrates has more ships on the field, and so he's got a pretty sizable advantage when it comes to overall health. I don't know why Dukeslayer has his antimatter cannons on... It almost seems like his antimatters are on point defense, which I don't think is necessarily helpful. Of all the guns to not have on point defense, I think antimatters are a pretty important one. But for the first time in this tournament, we're actually seeing proper kiting coming from Duke's fleet. As you can see, his ships are all trying to disengage. It looks like his drones are also on point defense. As you can see down here, the drones are engaging each other. But at the same time, I believe the game registers drones as being legitimate ships, and so weapons not set to point defense will still fire at drones. And it looks like we're going to have some first blood here in a second. As one of Jokrates' ships slowly getting singled out. But on the right side of the screen you can see that Dukeslayer's ship is being a little dangerous. Getting a little too close to all those lasers. Now, because Jokrates is relying largely on the Terran lasers for his damage protection, he has to get very close to his target. And you can see Duke's fleet is composed of ships that are much faster. And so in general they're not going to have that difficult of a time keeping away. Whereas Duke is using proton beams and antimatters and doing a pretty good job of keeping their distance for the most part. Just every once in a while they get a little close, but at the same time this chassis is pretty well armored. And so they shouldn't have too many problems with brief skirmishes. It's sustained fights that are going to be dangerous for Dukeslayer. But Duke building up a small point lead. Although I think he's about to lose it because one of his ships just decided to fly right into Jokrates' cluster. I think this guy is having a bad day. Managed to escape though, so he can rebuild. And yeah, for anybody who's watching what they're talking about in chat here, they're talking about these. Around the exterior toward areas of the ship are where Duke has all of his thrusters in these giant clusters here. And they do look rather nice. But that's one of the really big advantages of hyperstacking, is being able to fit a lot of modules in a very compressed area. Like, you can see Duke actually chose not to use the bulk of the space that was in the ship to begin with, and instead just filled that in with armor, which helps the ships live a little longer. And you're both on TV, so I hope you're smiling. If not, I'll have to contact the men, and they'll come and correct the problem. Duke is holding on to that point lead though, and with the clock winding down, it looks like Duke is probably going to be taking round one. Round 2 could still go either way. We already saw one flub up from the AI. But round 1 did definitely go in favor of Dukeslayer. Jokrates' fleet, I don't think Jokrates was expecting to fight kiters at all. The chassis is a bit big for most people's standards of designing a kiter. I can almost guarantee you that the bulk of investment in Duke's fleet is in thrusters. Well, you see, Floof. Have you ever heard about the men fixing the problem? Because that's how good they are. But yeah, a very large portion of Duke's budget had to have been going toward thrusters in order to get these things moving like this. But because the ships are back heavy, they tend to do this. Or like the bulk of the thrusters are in the back and kind of pointed backward, so the ship is going to spend a lot of time trying to fly in reverse, which works really well when someone's chasing you and really poorly when they're not. And this guy is just getting a lot closer than he needs to be. But again, because Duke replaced the front section of the ship with just more armor, you can see it's taking a while for those lasers to dig through, and it's giving him a lot of extra lifespan. But Jokrates is off to a decent point lead. The point gap between these two fleets was really close in the first round. And I suspect it's going to be really close in this one unless Duke's fleet makes some terrible choices. I remember this one time Splinter got really nervous in the stream and then ended up winning the champion pool by a landslide. He was like, I don't know, man, these fleets are really good, and then he just like romped through everything. Like won every match, every round, barely even lost a ship. Just saying. I think Splinter's just a nervous guy to begin with. But, as you can see, Dukeslayer did manage to bring back the point lead in his favor here in the last 30 seconds or so. I'm not seeing any... Yeah, I don't think this one's going to turn around. Even if this guy, yeah, even with him getting close enough, I think Duke has enough of a point lead where it doesn't really matter. And Dukeslayer takes the match. And up next we have Splinter against Jokrates. Let's see what sort of fresh hell Splinter conjured for us this time. So, Splinter actually decided to take advantage of another one of the things that I allowed, and that's that he turned his core around. So essentially all of his ships are backwards, which is why they look like piranhas. But let's see, we've got lasers, torpedoes, drones. Got some missiles here, some lasers in the middle. Pretty straightforward fleet. I think it's homogeneous too. But he's got a lot of forward-facing charging thrust, so his guys are probably going to try and get really close, which I feel like is going to go better for Jokrates than it will for Splinter. But we'll see. I do like when you can see the torpedo barrages hitting each other and detonating the other torpedoes, killing everything all at once. Although immediately after I talked about them charging in and it going better for Jokrates, they decided to start backing up and not get into close range. As long as they keep that behavior up, then it should go pretty well for Splinter. Provided ships don't manage to get themselves caught out and killed somehow. See you later, Flippies. Yeah. Well, you see, piranhas are actually pretty chill most of the time. It's only when there's blood in their water and they're hungry that they really start to freak out and go all frenzied. So I guess these ones are full? Oh, so are the piranhas the drones then? Is that how it works? Oh yeah, there was somebody's ships I was supposed to read the names of, but I apparently forgot that completely. And I didn't note it anywhere. So go me. If you had asked me to read the names of your ships, and I didn't, my bad. I don't even know whose fleet it was supposed to be. Were yours the ones I was supposed to read, Duke? Okay. So maybe not. I also might be making that up. That's entirely possible. I have been known to make shit up in the past. Jokrates keeping up on the scoreboard though. He's actually had a lead, I think, pretty much the whole match. Splinter's got to make something happen. But the bulk of his damage right now is coming from drones and missiles, which are both reliable but relatively low efficiency sources of damage. And that's it's good for sure, kind of ensuring that you'll gain points, but it's not very good for gaining points very quickly. And I think this pool is going to be longer than the other two pools combined. Well, I think in this particular format, everyone except Duke, I think, is weak to torpedoes because Duke can outmaneuver them, and everybody else really can't. let's see what we've got going on here. There's 20 seconds left on the clock, and only a little bit of time dilation left. As ships finally start getting cleared off the field so they can't spawn more drones and shit. Ooh, a quick little catch up from Splinter. But it does look like Jokrates is going to take the match. Yeah, he's keeping ahead in points. And round 1 goes to Jokrates. Now let's see how round 2 goes. There's a pretty fair chance it'll be very similar to round 1. Splinter off to a decent start here, though. I don't remember how the initial volleys went between Jokrates and Splinter before. I don't remember if Splinter took the lead initially or if Jokrates did, or by how much, because I think the last round was still very close, right down to the wire. I like this cloud of drones that was surrounding Jokrates' ship in the center of the screen. And yeah, and Terran ships tend to be very, very good at recovering too. The ships in general, like the armor pieces, regenerate very quickly, which if you space your armor correctly means you can regenerate all of your internals very quickly as well. Other factions tend to regenerate more slowly. I think Tinkerel's probably the worst about it. If a Tinkerel ship loses its gun, it may not be able to regenerate it in time for the match to end. So if it loses its gun, it might as well be dead. And yeah, there's a bunch of purple now. This is a pretty big lead you built up this time though, Splinter. I think you've scored more points this round. I don't remember what the scores got up to last time. I just kind of blank on the slower matches. And yeah, this one looks like it's going to go to round 3. Unless something really weird happens very soon. I'm not going to yodel. And yeah, you can kind of see the green cloud in the middle and the red cloud on the right. And Splinter's gonna be taking round 2. So let's see how round 3 goes. The bulk of Jokrates' fleet isn't even getting to do its job because he's using so many lasers. They're just ending up shooting down missiles and drones like the whole time. They're rarely shooting other ships with them. Splinter's fleet is just fast enough to keep distance. So Jokrates is relying on a lot of very close range weapons, whereas Splinter is relying on less efficient mid to long range weapons. But Jokrates has a lot of ships on the field, so individual ships aren't worth a whole lot. So Splinter has to use less efficient weapons to dig through large pools of HP. On top of that, what is it? And yeah, the drones and missiles, each one of them gets a full set of AI calculations, which causes time dilation, like this. And on top of that, because I'm compressing both for recording a video and streaming, it's eating up even more of my CPU, so a very large chunk of my processor isn't even available for running the game simulation. But we are seeing a pretty big point lead building up in favor of Splinter, not unlike last round. Yeah, the third pool here is generally Nightmare Pool, because Dukeslayer and Splinter typically appear in the third pool, and between the two of them, they usually present problems for people. Jokrates is usually in the late in the second pool or early in the third pool. So a lot of our usual third pool participants are veterans of the tournament community. So they have a really good idea how to make whatever they want happen. But a lot of the time they'll try and switch it up. Like Splinter usually builds more heavily armored brawling type ships. But in here he's decided to go with kiters that use drones and missiles. That sort of thing. Yeah, Clem, I'll have to look into that, but I don't think there's any built-in tools for that. I'd have to get some third-party software to try and do that. I've actually got another system that I'm going to do, and I'm just going to build a 2 PC streaming setup That way I can play at full quality on the one PC and use the other one for all of the video compression. And because I'll be building a new PC, the new one will be faster than this one anyway, which would dramatically improve the experience, I think. But that's going to be taking a little bit of time. I got some other things I need to spend my money on first. Right. The drones absorb more point defense fire than other sources of missiles and whatnot. I mean, if kind of works too. I've seen drones do some dumb stuff. And Splinter takes the match. So, up next we have Jokrates up against Husk. And this is our first appearance of Husk, who is using a couple different designs. He's got this guy with lasers and proton swords. Nothing we haven't seen before. This one's using a lot of torpedoes, though, which could pose an issue for Jokrates' fleet. They won't be able to avoid the torpedoes as long as they're aimed accurately. And then we've got these guys who are just sponges. And these will actually work out really well against Jokrates. He's got the stacked armor inside the skeleton, which Jokrates' lasers will have to dig through every single piece, although the torpedoes will cut through pretty quickly. And the big plasmas on the back are deceptively powerful. But let's see how Husk holds up. You can also see Husk manage to field 30 ships, which is quite a bit. Yep, Jokrates will be watching this from the... Well, is he watching this from the past or from the future? I guess it would have to be future. Let's see what's going on here. Now, another thing to note is that the lasers actually have longer range than the proton swords, which means that you'll get into situations like this where the lasers are firing, but the proton swords aren't in range yet. And you can see even some of the lasers here in the back are firing, but the proton swords haven't. If Husk's ships with the proton swords get within range, then they'll cause some serious problems. The proton swords are like 20 times as powerful as the proton sword is something like 20 times as powerful as the laser for like 15 times the cost. But if it doesn't get in range, then what good is it? Also, yeah, I think I'm still going with the theory that everyone who isn't you is actually me. If Husk is here, I don't recognize his name in chat. I think we're looking at some other folks. He also might just be watching in stream and not logged in. I suppose that's also possible. No, everyone in the stream is logged in, so yeah, I don't think Husk is here. Welcome back, Kamikaze Dalek. It does look like Jokrates will be taking round 1, but this one was pretty close for a while. I think eventually, though, Jokrates just started to wear down a bunch of Husk ships. The drone clouds can be pretty devastating if they do get a chance to build up, and the fact that Husk ships seem to like to sit outside of proton beam or proton sword range while using their lasers instead was definitely not doing him any favors. I need to go back and look at the second pool again because I completely missed it. So I can only tell you who made it from the first pool. And Jokrates takes round 1. Yeah, I didn't. I just wasn't paying attention. There's no other excuse. I was watching chat instead of watching the game. The torpedoes do seem to be doing a bit of work, though. On both sides of the field, that is, mind you. Yeah, from the first pool, we had Ludoshi and Xderp 7 make it into the champion pool. Yeah, I think you were third in that pool, Dalek. Yeah, I'm not seeing any dropped frames or anything. So things appear to be going well here, at the very least. Jokrates building up another point lead, so it looks like he's probably going to take round 2 as well. We still have the bulk of the third pool to go through. Well, I guess half of it. After this match, there's Duke and Splinter, Duke and Husk, and Splinter and Husk. So we've still got a little while left to go. Yeah, unfortunately there's a bit of time dilation in this pool. So this pool has already run as almost as long as, or longer than the other 2 pools combined or something like that. Alright, that's good. Welcome back, Floof. Ooh. Nice. Somebody had a physics glitch. What would have caused that? Yeah, got drone stuck on the inside there somehow. And physics glitched the ship out of the fight. And with the clock winding down and a pretty big lead in favor of Jokrates, I think we can probably call this one in his favor as well. Which I think means Jokrates has 2 wins? No. Because he lost... No, I think that's only 1 win for Jokrates, isn't it? Yeah, just 1. Alright, so now we have Duke up against Splinter. And Duke we saw kiting very effectively against Jokrates, but Splinter also kind of keeps his distance, so we'll see how that goes. Those antimatter's doing their job pretty effectively. But as you can see toward the right of the screen, Duke's ships are fast enough to outrun the drones, which is going to be a big problem for Splinter, because I think those drones were a disproportionately large amount of his damage output. And if those drones can't catch up to Duke's ships, then that's going to negate a very large portion of what he could do. Though, as I say that, Splinter does have a point lead going in his favor. Yeah, the missiles are still catching you, although a lot of them are timing out, at least when your ships are in full retreat mode. When they stop to engage or they fly backward straight into the enemy, then the missiles seem to be a much more effective weapon. It does look like Splinter does have the advantage though here, coming into the end of round 1. Very few points scored by either side though. I think Duke's ships are spending pretty much their entire time trying to run around and avoid incoming fire, and Splinter's got all of his drones just chasing all day. As Splinter was saying, he actually has more missiles than drones. You can see he only has the 4 6 drone launchers, but there's the 2 torpedoes and 5 or 6 missile launchers in there as well. But the when the drone clouds really start to build up is when they get dangerous. A drone isn't a big deal, but I think each drone launcher can maintain 4 drones in the sky, and when that happens is when it really starts to get dangerous. Did I say entire tribe? But and 1 ship down for Duke. I think that's pretty damning. Splinter already has more points this round than Dukeslayer scored in the last one, which doesn't bode terribly well in favor of Duke's fleet here. Maybe he'll be alright though. We'll see. As the drones begin to stack up, yeah, it's going to be a very big problem. How dare he ruin your formation, Splinter? The nerve of some people. That collision is going to go very poorly for Duke's ship, though. Toward the middle of the screen, you can see a drone cloud forming, and what happened was Duke's ship collided with one of Splinter's and came to a full stop with a huge pile of drones following it, which is a really good way to lose a lot of ships very quickly. But I'm feeling we can pretty confidently say Splinter's got round 2 and the match in the bag at this point. I don't think Duke's fleet is inclined to put anywhere near enough damage on the field to make up the difference. Nope, it was Kamikaze Dalek that wanted me to do that. No, I did not. I was just saying earlier, I think there was someone I was supposed to read the names of their ships, and I did not do that at all. I had completely forgotten. Because somehow my genius self managed to not make note of it anywhere. Yeah. Although if I remember right, you named them after some of the people, right? Like each of your cruisers was a little bit different, and they were named after competitors. Like I think one of them's the Duke Flunky, one was Mons Flunky, I think one was Splinter Flunky, something like that. And Splinter wins the match. So up next we have Duke up against Husk. Again, you can see the torpedoes and the antimatters. So antimatters and torpedoes are very interesting weapons. The torpedoes themselves have a low enough velocity that the AI generally doesn't want to kite with them, because the torpedoes just accelerate too slowly, so it thinks that they're close-range weapons. At the same time, the torpedoes, for a much lower cost, provide the same alpha strike and higher DPS, I believe, than the antimatters. Certainly more efficient DPS. But the AI generally doesn't want to kite with them, which makes them almost useless as a long-ranged weapon. Just a really frustrating problem. But otherwise, the two weapons are very comparable. And Dukeslayer doing rather well, but no kills on the field, as is kind of to be expected. Dukeslayer is relying exclusively on a long-range weapons loadout, which means he's not going to be able to do a ton of damage. He's mostly expecting to win by attrition, and maybe alpha striking something, but I think these ships are a little bit too big and too tough to be alpha strike like that. And, you know, each of Dukeslayer's ships has 2 antimatter cannons. The antimatter's just under 500 points per. So with the 10 antimatters that he's got on the field, that's almost 5,000 points right there. That's a third of his budget just in those guns. Ooh. Husk managed to pin and destroy one of Dukeslayer's ships though and take the lead, which could be disastrous for Duke. Yeah, I want to like the antimatter cannon, but I feel like it needs to be in a very large format tournament where you can use several of them and not really jeopardize your loadout. I think what long-range weapon options Husk does have on the field is having a bit of a detrimental effect on Dukeslayer's fleet. You can see Husk is using missiles and torpedoes on some of his ships, and as a result they are managing to Husk ships are managing to kind of attrition Dukeslayer's ships to death. And occasionally, I guess they did manage to catch that one out. But Husk takes round 1 with a pretty decent lead, but a little bit of AI problems on either side could easily change that around. And yeah. Splinter, Floof, Duke, Husk, Clem Hazard, and myself. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my bad. I completely forgot about that until this pool, actually. We, 2 pools later before I finally remembered it. If you go back and watch the recording, you'll hear me asking about it. I was like, wait, wasn't I supposed to read someone's ships? And here you can see the Duke's already lost one of his ships, and that probably isn't going to bode terribly well for Duke's fleet. Unfortunately for Dukeslayer, it looks like Husk will be taking this round. Pretty tough break. Watch him as he goes. Splinter singing you a song, Duke. That's all. And Husk takes the match. So now we've got Splinter up against Husk. Which I think I'm going to have to do a tiebreaker, depending on how this goes. If Splinter wins this, then I have to do a tiebreaker to figure out who's moving on. If Splinter loses this, then I get to just advance both of these fleets. So we'll see how it goes. Husk goes off to a pretty strong start here in the first round. Well, if Husk wins this one, Splinter, you've already got 2 wins. Husk has 1. So if Husk wins, then you both have 2, and then the other 2 people in the pool have 1. So, Splinter, you're pretty much a shoo-in at this point. If Husk wins, then he moves on to the champion pool. If Husk loses, we've got a 3-way tie with 1 win. And then we'll have to do a tiebreaker. I mean, if it goes to the champ pool, then even if you lose this one to Husk, it'll depend on how you and Husk do against everybody else. However, Husk is doing very well here, and it looks like at the very least Husk will be taking round 1. And Husk takes round 1. Yeah, as Splinter mentioned, Splinter's ships do try to fight on the back battle, but Husk runs up too fast for Splinter ships to be able to actually do that. And this little clusterfuck here in the middle is not good for Splinter at all. Why are we cursing the troll ship rules? Yeah, here it looks like Splinter's entire fleet decided it wanted to brawl, which is Husk's advantage, not Splinter's. Pretty tough break. Right. I don't know, I think backwards mobility should count. As long as you've got long enough ranged weapons. If you put a bunch of lasers on your ship and only backwards thrusters, then I don't think it should count. I think though, if you do that, I need to be able to disconnect your core, turn it around, and put it back in your ship so that I can see the game compute the thrust real quick. So, you know, if you do something like this, where you've got shit connected to your core that falls off immediately when I try to turn your core around, that could be a problem. Because I don't feel like putting that back together. So I think as long as you've got long enough ranged weapons to engage, like at start of the match, and I can turn the core around. If you want to make your ship just retreat, I could probably live with that. And Husk wins the match. So that should give us 2 wins for each of Husk and Splinter, and advance both of them on. And thank you for joining us, and I hope you're enjoying.